mall. It was a mall. I was having a mall. Anyway, it's true that, you know, when you're living up in the mountains, and that's where I was born and raised, the mountains of west central Maine, actually. It's also true I lived in Stony Creek for about 10 or 12 years. Never went in the inn, though. I didn't have to. All I had to do was open the windows on that side of the house. So this first poem actually is for my dad, because he always worked in the woods. Because, you know, that's what you do when you're born and raised in west central Maine, back then. So you work in the woods. And we were not very wealthy people, financially, that is. So when Dad would come home and bring spruce gum, anybody here not know what spruce gum is? Really? Get out! Do you know what a spruce tree is? Okay. Sap is you just take a knife, break that off, and you chew it. Bugs and all. But it's good for you. There's no sugar and whatnot. It's a great treat. Better for you than store-bought gum anyway. So, my poems don't rhyme. Don't bother me. That's your problem. And the biggest honor I had was I read this poem from my dad. And the idea is, you know, if people can't understand what whoops. If people can't understand what you're trying to say, I was going to use a socially inappropriate word there just a minute, but then what's the sense? Right? And so, my dad understood this poem. And his response was, huh. Because that's what the old timers do. Think about that. Whose mouth do I speak with? I can remember my father bringing home spruce gum. He worked in the woods and filled his pockets with golden chunks of pitch. For his children, he provided this special sacrament and would gather at his feet around his legs, bumping his lunchbox, and his empty thermos rattled inside. Our skin would stick to Daddy's gluey clothing, and we'd smell like Mama's pine salt. We had no money for store-bought gum, but that's all right. The spruce gum was so close to chewing amber, as though in our mouths we held the eyes of coyote. And how many other children had fathers that placed on their innocent, anxious tongues the blood of trees? Now, we're here in Gloversville, so how many of you have worked in a tannery? Right? Just 2 people have worked in the tannery. Well, I suggest that you all go read Dante's Inferno, and that'll give you a pretty good idea of what working in the wet room in a tannery is like. And so, I worked in a tannery up in Maine, East Wilton, Maine, dumping that chemical crap right straight into the rivers and things like that. Oh yeah, no such thing as OSHA. Nope. So it was quite an experience. I worked 2 days and 3 hours, second shift. and this is a true story. Tanning the hides with Sisyphus. Staged on a platform, the hide trimmer. Its 8-foot blades a caricature of push lawnmowers. A rotational blur spun parallel to the stained rollers that wrung out chromide 6 wash. You were pedestaled away from the rest of us, elevated under the classic low-hanging high-wattage light bulb, the main attraction. In a brilliant aura of aldehyde, wet white, and chromium sulfate, wet blue, never distracted, you never spoke. Us others stirred pennants, silent flesh in lagoon vats of pickling, washed, dyes, hides riddled with maggots, hatched en route from New Zealand. Our clothing rotted, arms, abdomens, shoulders bled with whatever color the hides were dyed that day. Working second shift was a blessing. That cooled the stench and poison we consumed with each inhalation, each pore of flesh. Communal transgressions, a wedge of distance between the blatting of the butchered and every hide we cut. Roughed and trimmed ragged excess, gluttonous faux pas became piecework promotions. Competitions that required 2 hands, 2 arms. We stacked hides on 10-foot seesaw trolleys, heaved teetering mounds of skin, skidded iron wheels across lime-pitted concrete, grunted with the wet of every 6-foot hide. Our flesh burned. A Dantean caisson rolled into the drying room and blast ovens, where carcasses were stretched and toggled onto mural-sized mesh screens, stacked upright to accommodate the neat slip into an envelope of Scirocco until dry, stiff. Skins never stopped coming, vats never empty, dead always floating, another trolley to be loaded. A rhythm to foot pedal released rollers and blades. I was new on the trimmer, a natural. Damn near made piecework my second night. 118 dozen creatures to your 200 plus. I wasn't even trying. Paychecks, paychecks. Was I your last stone, final shove off that night mid-shift you shut down your trimmer? Stood at the end of mine and said, my brother lost his arm on that machine last week. Your voice, chamois soft. You stood holding space with a pause of presence. You were done. You quit that night. Your statement, a trickle of pebble. What you could not do for your brother, you did for me. Good. Those are my happy poems, I'm just saying. I almost brought my guitar. I'm going to have to come back and bring my guitar, you know. I write music, you know. It's kind of like CrossFit training. You know, if you want to use more than one part of your brain, for crying out loud, do more than one thing. Jesus, pros. Use it or lose it, you know. Time's getting short. I wanted to ask him his name. My feet pressed into hot sand. His presence quoted shadowed walls, chipped by holy wars. No need to make a decision today, he said. Just walk. My scarab toes pushed pebbles. I wonder, does a time traveler know every journey? What do I know? But to ask questions God wants others to hear. This bearded old man whose laughter rolls through keyholes says, we walk east towards something yet to come. Pilgrimage. His hands with fingers linked behind his back is the only moment we get. And I think, what crescent curve does the sky reveal when we pay homage to the stars? Yeah. I've had people tell me all sorts of stuff, because I know I only look like 24, but I'm really like pushing 26, maybe 28. So I've been told a lot of stuff. Some of it's true, most of it's not. And someone told me once that this poem sucked. Absolutely sucked. And I said, no. No, it doesn't. And I set it aside, and about 30-some years later, I added 1 or 2 lines on the end, and I said, there, that fixed it. People can be wrong, you know. You gotta just do what you guys are doing. You be yourselves, and you just read, and you sing, and you know, because that's what's more important. What's going on inside. Fabric. The weaver has become the pattern. Plaid, full of angles and predictabilities. And the shuttling of husbands, children, lovers, wears her thin. There are 2 movements, past and future. The loose swatch of the present unravels, always in ballet fashion, dangles gracefully between flying and landing. There is a texture in love that needs to be felt, needs deft fingers to braid the over-under of self. Fingers that toe dance over warp and weft, that understand the rhythm of the loom, the tapestry, an arabesque of extended tones, both subtle and vibrant. With eyes closed, the clatter of shuttle and feet pumping the loom, like a grand pipe organ resonating across threads. She remembers her last words to her first lover, like worn denim. Love me like that.